like I said in the comment on the assignment, you guys have been doing really good at getting your stuff turned in. Sorry, I'm taking a bit longer to get back to you on your feedback. This is all kind of kicking off here. With everybody in the new classes and everybody turning in all their work at the same time, but I will get that stuff sent back to you in the next, either today or tomorrow. Okay, so this week we're talking about Brazil still, and we're doing inequalities. So as we go through and you look at inequalities would be the things that are there's quite a lot of really rich people in Brazil, and then there's people who live in absolute poverty. So we're going to go through, look at that. I'm just going to give you guys a really quick overview on this. I have seen there's been quite a few people last week. We had 20 people view it, so I want to make sure that I'm still having this available for you. So if you look at your learning intentions, identify inequalities in Brazil, understand the reason why there are housing problems in Brazil. Okay, success criteria, you'll be able to define urbanization and create an accurate graph of population growth in Brazil. Okay, so the president of Brazil is a guy named Jair Bolsonaro. He's promised to tackle social problems that are facing Brazil. He's been in the news quite recently. So if you turn on the BBC, if you watch BBC News tonight, you'll see he's been in the news quite often in relation to COVID-19 and his country's response, and it's not really going that well. But so he's a person you might actually know, or that you might see on TV in current events. So social issues are issues that affect people directly. So like healthcare, education, and housing. So there are also things that can help close the gap between the rich and the poor. Because if people who don't have a lot of money have access to good education, then their likelihood of them being able to get out of being poor is much higher. So we're really fortunate in Scotland that we have free school all the way up to university or college, and vocational training and apprenticeships and all the things that go in with that. So it makes it where that gap, your ability to get out of your situation that you grew up in, is much easier than what it would be in a place like Brazil. Task 1, you need to sort the statements out and decide which ones are examples of rich and which ones are examples of poor housing. So this one here is pretty straightforward. Usually surrounded by swimming pools, barbecue areas, trees, and tennis courts. So you're going to split your paper in half, and you're going to move them around on this one and put them in the sides. Have one side for rich housing, one side for poor housing, and obviously if you're surrounded by swimming pools, barbecue areas, and tennis courts, that's going to be something for a rich housing. So go through those and work that out. You just pick them and drag them down here. Task 2 is dealing with urbanization. So the cities are growing really quickly, okay, and houses are expensive and they're hard to get a hold of. So they have there's ways that they're going around getting it. The more people who live in the area, that means the more people who are needing land, but you can't necessarily just make a city bigger. So they all kind of start piling up on top of each other. Okay, so urbanization in the 1950s, this is something that's happened in the UK, hence why so many people live around our cities and in our cities and stuff like that, and why it's so expensive to buy a house in London, for example. There's a shortage of houses, a shortage of food, because it's hard to get enough stuff in to feed people. It's hard to get, you can't just build pipes and everything overnight, so there is a bit of a shortage. So getting electricity and plumbing and stuff like that is difficult. So since the 1950s, the population has exploded. 207 million people, and more of them moving to the cities. So that's called urbanization. So I want you to take that, put it into your own words. Okay, task 3 is a map task. So you have a map there. I want you to identify, so you can use this map here and identify the places in there. Something you might be able to do is, if you're doing it here, some of you guys have been doing a really good job with this. So you go to Insert, Shapes, and you can do an arrow, and then draw an arrow. I'm just going to do like that. It went the wrong way on me, so that's really annoying. Alright, and Brasilia is roughly there. Okay, and then you can insert another shape. That looks alright. And Brasilia. So then you right click, add text. Brasilia. Now, one thing that you can do though is you can choose that. If you hit Control or Command whenever you do that, you copy it, and then you can paste it, and then you can move those around, and you won't have to keep making the new boxes and stuff like that. So, and then change the name from Brasilia to whatever it is that you're putting on there. Makes sense? Right, I will get rid of that stuff, so I make sure it's not. Come on, okay. All right, so then there's some information that you can use. Make sure you watch the video. It is working. There's bits of information and stuff on all of these. There's notes down here as well. So you're going to be looking at stuff and dealing with favelas. So favelas are really poor living conditions in the area. Okay, that's part of urbanization. Task 4, push and pull factors. So push factors are things that make people want to leave the area that they live in. Pull factors are things that make them want to go somewhere else. So take a note, and then you need to write some statements about what's a push factor and what's a pull factor. So remember, a push factor is something that makes you want to leave the place that you live. It could be unemployment, it could be poor housing, it could be all sorts of problems that you may have. All right? And a pull factor would be something that would want to bring you to the other place. For example, somebody who really doesn't like living in the city, they can't find, let's say somebody lives in London, if you've ever watched a housing program or something like that, and you've seen how expensive houses are in London, and you're realizing that they really can't afford, like a house in London that cost £400,000 would be the equivalent of a house in Annan that would probably cost £80,000. So people want to leave that and move to a place where if they spent £400,000 in Annan, then they'd have like a really massive, crazy house, which it would be nice to be able to spend that much on a house, but we won't talk about that. Okay, so the pull factor would be being able to buy a big, nice house in Annan. The push factor would be the bad things about what people don't like in London. So go through and sort those into push factors and pull factors. Okay, task 5. You're going to look at, so here's housing and stuff like that. Okay. Task 5, your heading is Sao Paulo. You're going to read the handout, which is here. That's the handout there, over here. And make your own notes under headings. So your headings are, where is Sao Paulo, history, population, visitor impressions, and a tale of two cities. All right. You're not allowed to write more than 3 things. That doesn't mean 3 words. 3 separate things under each heading. You need to be selective. I want you to pick out the most important things, because you're only writing 3 statistics, but those 3 statistics or bits of information should summarize everything about that section. So you need to be really selective with what I don't want you to just rewrite. I don't want you to rewrite what's already there. Okay, so it starts here with where is Sao Paulo, history, and then you read through, and then you take your own notes on those headings. Okay, task 6, there's a documentary about favelas, and take notes while you're watching it. This is something, guys, I can't stress enough how important it is to be able to watch videos like this. This in particular is a video like discussing favelas, which is where the ultimate really, really poor people live, outside of cities, places where they don't have running water, they don't have waste, electricity, Wi-Fi, which sounds crazy for us. They take notes on that. Like, this is going to really put into perspective the differences. When you look at pictures and things like that of housing in different parts of Brazil that look like that, and then whenever you look at people's stories when they're living in favelas, which are places that look like that, watch the documentary. Alright, then you need to do a mind map. You can use the notes that you took from the documentary and create a spider diagram or a mind map and leave space to add more information. So here's some examples of some things that you would put in there. All right. You can do a bit better than that. You can add a bit more information to that as well. All right. Problems in favelas. So for each of the different problems, you need to have so they get high crime rate, which would be a problem. This is where you're going to add information. So you're taking that mind map and you're adding information because you've listed the problem when you've done your mind map. Then you need to, that's what it says, leave space to add information about your problems. All right. If you live in a place with a high crime rate, people may fear to live there. The impact, the so what factor, and loss of family members controlled by gangs. So you might lose someone who's close to you because of you grew up in a favela. They might end up getting involved in gangs and stuff like that because they don't have the option. All right. Then you need to do a PEE. So this is the last task. So there's 8 tasks here. And basically, this is the structure that you're going to have going all the way up through higher if you choose to do it. Point, explain, example, and national. These are the most critical thing that you can learn to do. And they sound really difficult at first, but then you basically sort it all out. Once you learn the skill, you're completely set up. Okay? So you answer questions. So the question that you're going to be answering today is describe in detail 2 problems faced by people living in favelas. So you got a point, which is where you say what the problem is, then you explain what the problem is, and then you give an example. So for this, you're going to do 2 separate PEEs. And you're going to write them out. Here's your writing stem. 1 problem faced by people living in favelas is, just write what it is. And then this means you give a definition of what it means. For example, you give an example of what that might mean. Okay, so the first point is tell the marker this paragraph is going to be about. State your point. So 1 problem living in favelas is high crime rates. Okay, this means that, what does high crime rate mean? Define it. That's where you put here and explain. And then an example of high crime rate, you've already got that down when you did your notes because you've wrote the... For example, someone might lose a family member due to gang violence. Okay, I'd rather you guys not do that one if you can choose one of the other ones because I've given you the example of how to do it. But poor sanitation, what is sanitation would be your explain. And then when you talk about, for example, blah, 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 lack of running water could lead to poor health. Okay, that's your specific example. So you got 1 PE, or you got a proper national question to answer, but whenever you answer it, make sure you do it in PE. So you're just filling out 2 of these. That should be PEE, but for some reason it's not letting me change it. So PEE, point, explain, example. All right.
Passport should I do?
I've already uploaded this, so I won't be able to change your copy. So just make sure that you notice that I should say PEE, like what it says above. Okay? All right, if you have any questions, get in touch. If you have any questions, get in touch, and we can go from there. Okay? Porch. Now, for interrupting. So if you have any questions, get in touch. Make sure that whenever you're on your whenever you're on your make sure that whenever you try and tag me in your comments, make sure you put at Mr. Snelling, because then that actually pops up on my phone, and then I know somebody in that group has done, because it kind of gets buried in the mess. But yeah, try and tag me whenever you do a comment. But I'll get the work back from last week back to you soon. And if you have any questions, get in touch. Alright guys, bye.